was not granted to the school at the time, and so he tried to set up PLC groups within the school, but they were meeting at 6 o'clock in the morning and all these kind of random times that were really, really difficult for anything to happen because we were planning them on our own time and we didn't really have any of that. We had very little of that to offer beyond of what we were already kind of doing for our kids, and at some levels it's next to impossible to get joint time where you can reflect. So for example, at a high school schedule, they purposely don't put people who teach the same course off at the same time, because in order to have all students meet that credit requirement, they have to offer an English class or a history class or a chemistry class every single period of that day. So when one person is off for plans, someone else is teaching the course, and any collaborative time for that subject area is either happening at their homes over the summer as they change their curriculum, or really late at night, or really early in the morning, or as they're passing each other in their 20-minute lunch, you know? So I think one thing that would be helpful to help everyone kind of understand it is first kind of explain what it should look like, and you know, then as you're moving in that direction, well, you know, if you're going to put a PLC model in place, what are the metrics that you would have to be assured that that time is using in the manner it's designated? Because I think we need that education, and I also think there's an efficient way of doing it, probably in a less efficient way, and some of it is simply about training and saying, this is what this model means, let's train ourselves on how to do it well, because when it's done well, it can be really incredible. And I think there is that desire there.
I'd be interested in hearing some more on that particular thing. I think too, and I hope that the board or that these committees can address this. You know, there's an inherent issue in the structure of the educational system that creates a culture of administration instead of a culture of teaching. When the only way that you can get promoted as a teacher is to go onto an administrative side, there is an underlying message there that being outside of the classroom is where you find success. And the altruistic feelings that all teachers have, and many of them stay out of that administrative track, out of the opportunity for promotions, out of the opportunity for more money, because they're dedicated to students. And so one of the concepts of the U of I is not just to find new PLC models. This one may very well work for within that structure, but it's to give teachers the opportunity to go from teacher to mentor to master teacher to educator, innovator outside of into a university setting, and to bring and to pool those resources into the classroom. But more importantly, to say, if you're a great teacher, not only are we going to pay you more money, we're going to give you more opportunity to influence other teachers. And that's the value, in my opinion, the great differentiator over the last decade, and you could probably go back to the 1940s when you look at educational pieces, is the fact that we have promoted those into the administrative roles and created a culture of administration instead of a culture of mentoring, teaching, and developing. And in my opinion, those altruistic teachers that stay inside those classrooms because that's where their real heart is, those are the ones that got to be celebrated. Those are the ones that have to have opportunities to develop. Those are the ones that have that passion and love and desire for both teaching students and other teachers. That's the culture we've got to build. That's the structure that has to be in place in order to continue that. Obviously I'm pretty passionate about that, but I really think that this innovative model outside of the IT piece, that professional development, that induction mentoring program, is where education has got to go around the country in order to increase the caliber and magnitude of our teacher corps as a whole. So I'm pretty passionate about that. So anyway, when they come back, I hope that they'll look into that structural change that has to happen in order to empower teachers and parents and principals in the education system.
That's my time.
I was just curious about the PLC, and you said they would like to have a late start like other districts do. I know the high schools, at least 2 of them, I'm not sure if all of them do it here on Wednesday mornings, have a late start. I don't know if all 3 do. But are you looking at extending that? Other districts do it for the middle and the elementary level also?
Yes.
Okay.
And when I was in Littleton Public Schools every Wednesday,
All right.
was a 2-hour late start.
Well,
And again, I think you have to be super intentional. We had great accountabilities when I was in Littleton, for example, around what the expectations were. And I think I should really be clear here, because Marie, you're right, because a part of what we heard was the 4. What do we want them to know? When we know, when we know that they got it? What do we do if they don't get it? What do we do when they already have it when they come to us? The big 4 questions. That's really the true PLC. But that was sort of split down that traditional or the true model or the original model, and then opportunities to micro-innovate together, to create micro-innovation together. So I think that would be the 2 differentiators. But we can certainly bring that education and clarity this spring as we move forward.
Great. Anybody else?
No, I just want to say there, as a mom, there is an advantage to having, when that elementary is out, having the high school out for some folks, because many of your primary babysitters tend to be the high school student who you would hire to watch your kindergartner, or if you're someone who has children in multiple age groups, you may be relying on your high schooler to watch your child who's not quite old enough to be home alone. So it can be helpful to families who have more than one child in more than one age group when some of those things are united. So just food for thought as people look at their calendars.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn, and your committee's work on that. I look forward to reading that on the Wikispace. And so now we will take a 10-minute recess. So at 9:05, we will be back here ready to start. Got it?
So you have the policy and the regulation that is coming from the communications department. This is the district school website policy. Currently, we don't have any policies guiding district websites, so it was something we certainly needed to address and put out some guidelines. As you know, the communication department strives to connect with our community, engage with our community on a variety of platforms, one of which is the district and school level websites. We use the websites as basically a hub for all other information, driving people there to get all the information they need. So we're hoping that this policy will provide some guidelines and strategies for managing websites appropriately. The communications department manages the district's websites, but schools have the autonomy and the freedom to do whatever they choose with their websites. They have individuals designated at each of the buildings to manage their sites. So the policy will provide some consistency, provide some guidelines and expectations for what we include on the school websites, who's authorized to post information, what information is okay. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I did want to make address one item that I discussed, a question that came in specifically about what kind of photos are allowed to be posted and published on the website. We have the media release consent forms. They're signed by parents at registration, so we have those on file, so we don't publish students' photos if they have a denied media release. But one of the bullet points in the regulation stated that pictures of groups of students involved in activity could be published without the media release waiver. So what that scenario is if there's a huge auditorium of students and someone took a group photo, oftentimes not all the kids can be identified, and there's a whole bunch of kids in there, so we would post the photo. But if you couldn't designate who was approved and who wasn't approved, you would just say this is the Sand Creek Auditorium. You wouldn't put out students' names or anything like that. However, there are students that have media release forms denied for very specific reasons, and so I think it would be relevant to add a caveat to that one bullet that says if we are working with the school administrators, if there is a student who specifically has a media release denied, we would make our best effort to identify those students, make sure they couldn't be included in any kind of a photograph so that they wouldn't be published on the district website. That also would cover us, because if a media outlet were to come to one of those events, the media could just as easily snap a photo and put it somewhere, so it would protect those students in that kind of scenario as well.
Good.
So there would be one line that would say, and I can give you this on the third bullet, the second bullet in number 3 on the regulation, that would add students with denied media consent forms will not be included in published photos, to clarify that. But that would allow us, when you have those big group photos, sometimes students don't have media release forms for whatever reason. They're not denied, they're just not on file. That would allow us to go ahead and use the group photos, but be very specific about the students with the denied forms, if that makes sense. So I don't know if you have any other specific questions.